voted Best Station in the Nation 2020.
Hi everyone, my name is Trinity. I am starting my new show. This is a new voice that you've heard. If you heard me last week, I was doing training with our program director and it was really fun. So I'm not going to get too much into it. I'll probably get a 30-minute introduction and then we'll just dive right into it because I just want you to know how this show kind of goes instead of me just kind of yapping for like an hour about myself. So for starters, I'm going to open up with just introducing myself, my year in DePaul, and my major. So my name is Trinity. I usually go by Trin. A lot of people usually just kind of drop the ITY after a while and they just say Trin. So my year in DePaul, I'm actually a transfer student. I moved back home about 2 years ago. I think this will actually hit 2 years that I've moved back home abruptly from being Ohio. In Ohio, I went to Kent State, pursuing the same major, which is advertising. But since DePaul is different here, there's kind of a double major. So it was a kind of a 2-for-1. So I'm taking public relations and advertising, to which is called PRAD at DePaul. I never heard that until a lot of PRAD majors were just like, oh, you're a PRAD major too? I'm like, what is that? And they're like, oh, it's public relations and advertising. I'm like, oh, okay. That makes sense. So yeah, I'll get more into that, how I came to DePaul and everything like that much later. But for now, I want to talk about how does this show exist? Why does it exist maybe a little bit, and who would benefit from this show? So for starters, for as long as I can remember, I've loved storytelling. And for as long as I've understood what stories were and how to tell them, I've just continued to do so. I think about this now with my parents. I know they were supportive, but I feel like at some point they were sick of me because there would be times where I would be setting up my chairs in the living room in the house and just setting up, doing, little performances and stuff like that. Honestly, I feel like I started doing improv before I actually knew what improv was. And any sense of the word, any sense of storytelling, I did it. And there would be times where again, I feel like they'd be sick of me. There would be times where I would play waiter or waitress and I'd make menus. Like the further my skills got with creativity, like once I started learning how to type and learning how to write and things like that, learning how to print and at this point, I started learning how to laminate and my menus were even better. Like this is a Michelin star restaurant. Like I went crazy. So I did any sense of the word. And then once I started using technology, I had my iPod Touch and I would make movies with all of my toys and my dolls, and all of the credits were like made out of notebook paper. And it was just a really fun time. And once I got older, social media just kind of came into the scene, and I wasn't really allowed to have Instagram until I was like 15, but I kind of snuck and got Snapchat anyway because everybody had Snapchat and I just wanted, I had a little bit of FOMO at the time. So I would use that. I posted so much. I remember me and my best friend of 11 years now. We remember how many snaps. We would probably post about like 80 snaps. And it would be so, honestly, I feel like it was just a little insufferable. But at this point, we've calmed down nonetheless. I don't even think we're on Snapchat anymore as much as we used to be. But on Snapchat, when I got in high school, I started posting a little show that I talked about animal facts because I love animals. I love learning about their behavior. I love learning just their evolution, everything under the sun. And for a long time, I thought I was going to be a zoologist. Like I wanted to be a zoologist for a very long time, but it's still a hobby that I love learning. And even still, I just love animals because they're so cute. So I would look up, maybe take a couple of minutes to learn about a specific animal. And I would post maybe at most like a minute, like a minute post on Snap. Because at this point, this is when Snapchat started enabling things longer than 3, 7, 10 seconds. And I would start every show like, hey everyone, welcome to today's Animal Facts. And today we're going to be talking about the hippopotamus. And the hippopotamus they actually sleep underground, like they sleep underwater and stuff like that. And it was really fun because I would decorate the Snap with stickers and everything like that. And then I would talk about Elephant Fridays because elephants are my favorite animal. And after a while, once I started getting comfortable and everything like that, I started posting the bloopers, like what the takes that didn't make it, because I always loved behind the scenes lore, like storytelling and everything like that. When, if you remember, Pixar movies used to make, like, literally do extra work to make the bloopers, and I always thought that was so fascinating. And even though it was extra, once I found out much later, I was like, they're not real. They're actually making extra stuff for it. I was like, it's still fun because bloopers, they're still real. It was just at the point. You get it. But I thought it was funny, and a lot of other people thought it was amusing as well. And after more consistency, people were actually starting to reach out to me and giving me requests. And it was like, oh, could you actually talk about a dolphin? And I thought that was really funny and really comforting as well, because honestly, you could have looked it up on your own, but I think it was just the fact that they saw a sense of entertainment with me. I was just like, I really like how she brings information. Regardless, I really thought it was cool that she, some of my friends would be like, oh, talk about a dolphin, or like, talk about a walrus, or this is my favorite animal, could you talk about this? And that's when I started realizing that people find some sort of solace in me, and entertaining and storytelling is something that I think I'm pretty good at. So we shift later in, a couple of years later, because I said in high school, to COVID. Then came COVID. Yes, I was in high school when COVID happened. I don't know what that makes you feel about your age, but I mentioned something to like an old friend, and her son was like, you were in high school during COVID? I feel so old. So whatever that makes you feel, it's up to you. But around my senior year is when COVID started to take place, and we started moving to our new house and everything like that. And the animal facts just kind of like slowly died out, which, makes sense, because I didn't know what was going on with COVID. And every month we thought the world was going to open back up, and it just, I was obviously just like everybody else. I was inside the entire time. But later on, I started to develop this idea of like maybe making a podcast, because for as long as I can remember, when I was younger and just talking, some people would tell me, hey, your voice is actually very soothing. And it's like, I really like the sound of your voice. It's very peaceful. Like it, listening to you after a while, it can make me fall asleep. And when I hear that for the first time, I mean, I don't feel too much about it now, but when people would tell me that, I was like, wow, am I like boring? Like, do I make you fall asleep? I thought it was a thing where I'm just like, you're kind of softly insulting me. But no, I'm like, I get it now. But everyone was telling me, oh, you should try, maybe you should, I think that would be a really good idea. And at that time I was like, okay, why not? So this whole scenery, because I'm also recording for my YouTube channel, which I'll plug in at the end of this if you plan to stick around. But I was deciding, okay, maybe I should try a podcast. And I know when people start something, they usually try and go all in. Like, what is the best technology I need? Which domain should I post on to get the most views? I just wanted to get my stuff out there. And plus, I was 17. I don't think, like, technology, especially for media, is expensive. So if you just want to get your stuff out there, there's nothing wrong with using your phone for a while and then posting to whatever domain you want. If you want multiple domains, then try a podcasting hub, which is what I did, because I had a lot of friends who didn't have Apple Music, but they had Spotify, or people who had Spotify but didn't have Apple Music, and then some people had SoundCloud, and then some people use Pandora, Amazon Music, all those things. So I was just like, you know what? I'll just put it here. I'll pay the $15 a month. Nothing crazy, nothing too serious. So I did that. But with the podcast name and its content and what was involved in it, I wanted to talk about things that obviously make me happy, the things that bring me joy. And I thought, even still, there are some things, even though it brings me joy, I'm sure it brought other people joy, because people find a sense of excitement of wanting to talk about the things that I like to talk about. So I wanted it to have a really nice name. I wanted the comfort in the content to match with the comfort in the name. So when I started working on things, because I told you I'm an advertising major, so I started doing this. When you're given like a pitch, or when you're working on a project or whatever, what have you, you start to kind of brainstorm just words. Like, if I'm working with somebody and they want to work on let's say they have like a YouTube show that they want to do. And they're just like, I'm trying to figure out a name for it. I'm like, okay, give me some words that you want to be added to this word. Like, what do you want this to be attached to? And say some words. Like, when I started working on my podcast, I was like, I want peace, I want silliness, I want gentle, like I want all these things to be like soft, stuff like that, fun, all those words. And I wrote them down, and peace and mind were just like, okay, I definitely want to center my title around this. And I remember, I don't even know if Walgreens still does this right now, but Walgreens would have, the commercials would be like, at the corner of happy and healthy. And I was like, I think that's a cute idea. So I was like, okay, what about at the corner of peace and mind? And I like to have like a little ring to it, because if you were to place it in a sentence, it'd be like, oh, I'm listening to the podcast at the corner of peace and mind. Because if you want to find some peace and mind, or if you want to be away for at least an hour and just hear about animation, you want to hear about music, if you want to hear about all these things, then come to at the corner of peace and mind. Right? Like I thought I ate with that. I can't lie. So I was like, this is it. And I just started making episodes about Steven Universe, which is one of my favorite shows ever, which we will talk about in this show. If you like Steven Universe, this is the show for you, and adding to the people who will benefit from this and much others. But I talked about storytelling, my sense of why storytelling is so amazing, and more than just, books. Anything that has a narrative at all is worth telling and worth knowing about and worth analyzing. And that's really what the show is about. So at the corner of peace and mind, like I said, started nearing the end of my high school days, my high school career. And it kind of it tried to transfer. I really tried transferring it into school when I went to college in Ohio, but it just didn't work out. The consistency was not existent at all. And I tried my best. It would be like really sporadic. And I was trying out a new thing. I was like 400 miles away from home. It was all these things. And then abruptly, amongst many other reasons, because of a breakup, I moved back about, like I said, about 2 years ago. And once I came back home, I started getting back into the things that I love, because I came back home with just this void of a person. Like I didn't really have all the things that I loved doing that motivated me. I was just like, well, here I am. Like I'm home. Like all this stuff, all the things I do, because I'm also a musician. I play trombone. Like I hadn't practiced in months. I hadn't read. All the books that I probably read, I probably DNF'd or do not finished it a while. And again, the podcast just wasn't podcasting. So I was just like, okay, well, I'm alone with myself. Let's try and do the things that I love to do again. And all the podcasting things I did on my own. Like I did MP3. I tried doing the whole thing. I got most college universities have a media room, because of course, if they offer media degrees, they're going to have that to practice, right? So when I went to Kent, there was, in the library or any other place, you usually rent or like just request and put your name and email, your school email, and see what time and just book the slot. And I just, just like the training that I had with Sophia, I was just like, oh, this is how this goes. And then you just come in and do what you need to do and then leave. But at this point, this was new, because I didn't have any. I wanted to try something new. I wanted to try maybe recording myself and doing it in the videos, and then at this point, people were starting to say, hey, why don't you record yourself? Why don't you do videos when you do your podcast? Because I think that was like the new craze or whatever. And I was like, okay, sure. And I started looking around in my area, and I found a studio, and the producer that we're still in contact, Brian, because sometimes I don't know or some things when it comes to radio, I'm like, what's going on? And he was the one who put me on a DaVinci Resolve, and I was like, I love DaVinci Resolve to 10 toes down. Don't give me Adobe. I'll try my best with Adobe, but DaVinci Resolve has been that girl. And ever since then, we made a few episodes together, and that's what became the Lore Love Tales, which was the rebrand from At the Corner Peace and Mind, because I was like, I need a new start. I need to start over. So the Lore Love Tales is just exactly what it is, a tale of someone who loves lore. And anybody who, again, loves narrative and understanding why stories are the way that they are when it comes to books, movies, TV, radio, all of those things. And if this is something that you like, then by all means, this is, we're here Tuesdays at 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. CST. Because I think I have maybe one of the friends that I'm going to be mentioning that does not live. I have one remaining friend in Ohio, and and she knows, I think she knows that I address her as such, because she knows how much, like, you will have to pay me $3 gazillion to go back to Ohio. Like, somebody has to be paying me to do something to ever go back to Ohio, because my dear friend Demaya, which is, again, this is how we're getting into the show, because we're going to be talking about Severance, the new, the popular drama thriller, psychological thriller. And I kept seeing Severance so much. I kept seeing, Severance, this. I watch YouTubers and they'd be like, this show Severance, it's really good. Or I'd see a tabloid and I think the original cast did some sort of like performance in New York or somewhere. And then a few weeks ago, my friend Demaya, my dear friend, we were on the phone and she was like, we were just talking chit-chatting. And she was like, have you seen Severance? And I was like, no, I haven't. But because you know what, I'll watch it. Because at this point, it seems like Severance is following me. And I was like, okay, fine. Now, it wasn't like I could just sit, once we got off the phone, I just started watching Severance. I was kind of busy. Finals was coming around this time, and if you're listening on Radio DePaul, DePaul goes, I'm not too sure it's specifically who listens and all goes to DePaul, but just like a quick disclaimer, DePaul goes by quarter systems, and with that, each quarter is about 10, 11 weeks, and the spring quarter, we're actually in our fourth week, and midterms are already next week. So we kind of get ripping and rolling at this point. The last quarter in the winter, we had our spring break around, if I'm not mistaken, like March 17th that week. And 2 weeks before that, I think, is when me and Demaya had that conversation. And I was getting ready to get my head right. And I really prioritize my education because I am an academic weapon. So I was like, okay, maybe I should try Severance, of course, when I have the time. But I couldn't do it at that time because, one, again, I was studying for finals. I'm in an orchestra. I rehearse once a week. And on top of that, I was like, I already have so much to watch with my 17th rewatch of Gilmore Girls and my occasional rewatch of BoJack Horseman episodes. I'm so busy. So I was like, you know what? I'll take some time and watch Severance during my spring break. And with that, I was tired. I was like, you know what? How about this? What if I just do all of my homework? Now, when I told you the spring break was on the 17th, there's usually the week before. Of course, there was spring break and then there was finals week. And then before finals week is like the last week of in class. It's like the last time you're meeting for class. So that week, my last class of the days were it was on a Thursday because I have classes Tuesday, Thursday, and I try to get classes those days. But, whatever. But I was like, at the end of my last class, I was like, you know what? I'm going to finish all of my work Thursday and Friday so that my spring break starts on Saturday and I have an extra week. Now, this could not be a possibility if all of my finals were take-home papers or projects or recorded presentations that you could submit from home. Obviously, if you had in-person finals, you couldn't do this. You'd probably have to go in for finals week, right? But for me, I was like, I can do this. I can absolutely do this. I had all of these assignments. I had so many tasks to do. I had a couple of exercises I do. I still had to reply to discussion boards. I had to make menus for my Prad professional Adobe. It was Adobe, class. And one of my classes I was taking for Black Chicago, I had to, we talk about the history of Black Chicago and also talking about ethnic foods, and I had to order Senegalese food and make a review for it, and I had to make a 5-page paper. It was all these things, and I was like, this is gonna get done. This will get done from either taking Thursday and Friday. Oh, I had to go and visit a Black-owned business and talk to them, and then make it was a whole lot. And did I come out victorious? Absolutely. I told you I'm an academic weapon. I ended at 4 a.m. But it was fine. It's super good. Like, Saturday was my day of my first spring break, and it was great. Like, I was literally just having fun with my friends, because I think that day I had a birthday dinner with some friends, and that whole week was like really recreational. And I think I might have some family functions or something like that too. But that following week, the actual spring break week, was when I started Severance. And once I started Severance, I think once the new quarter started, because the new quarter started at like the 5th of this month, and I think around that, I think I ended season 1. So season 1 was ending when I started the new quarter, this spring quarter. So I say all that to say this. One of my classes is effective communication and human resources. And, first class is the first day of classes usually talk about introductions and stuff like that. But since DePaul is so fast paced, you kind of get a mixture of everything in the first day. You get the syllabus, and you also get like the first week of content. So not only do you have to read the material for the first week, you also have to take a syllabus quiz. So instead of kind of prolonging all of this stuff, it's just really condensed. It's almost, when I think about it, it's almost like taking summer classes continuously. But I've gotten used to it at this point, I think. So I was like, okay, this is a cool class. And it was online, So I learned about the history of human resources, which really dates really, really far back. And I was like, wait, this is actually very interesting. And actually, some of this stuff, I can see some of this stuff happening in Severance. I can see the shifts of leadership from Cobell and Milchick. And all of this stuff could be this could be some sort of YouTube video. And at the time, I wasn't posting any YouTube videos at the time. And if I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't even know I was going to be doing Radio DePaul at that time. I think the week after is when our program director reached out to us and was talking about interviews. I'm talking about having a show. So at this time, I didn't really know I was going to be doing this a couple weeks ago. So with that, we did interviews and we set up everything. I talked to Sophia about the show, and she was like, this is a really good idea. You can be really broad with it. We kind of bonded over BoJack Horseman. Take that information of what you will. But at the same time, I was like, wait, maybe this could be the first, I don't know, I was going to say episode, because I've had a long history of doing podcasting, and radio, not so much. So is it like segment? Maybe I'll just say like Tuesday hour. So for today's Tuesday hour, I'll be talking about the weird human resources behind Severance. So before we go on break, though, I will say the way that I talk, I wanted to talk about Severance, but I know, not everyone has probably seen it. So I'll tell you with this story. When I look at books, because I like to read, I usually like going to, a small, go to indie bookstores. Go to a small little independent bookstore. Barnes & Nobles is fine. But at the end of the day, there's nothing rewarding than having a conversation with independent bookstore owners. Because if you think about it, they put their a good chunk of their career, maybe even their savings into this business. And you're not going to feel like you're bothering these people because they love books, because they put their entire business into it. And plus, like, they have really unique merch. And sometimes they may have books that they don't have at Barnes. But again, wherever you get your books, whatever. But when I go into a bookstore, I'll look at the cover. And if it's aesthetically pleasing, sometimes I just start reading the book. I'll just start reading the book. How does the writing style, what does the writing style feel for me? Like, how does this make me feel? Do I resonate with it? Is it boring me? Is it doing all these things? And if it's intrigued me, then I kind of read the back. I don't know how that works. Sometimes I don't know, if you're a different person, if you do the same thing, kudos to you. But I'm just like, if it resonates, if it like interests me, then I'll read the back. But if it doesn't, I usually just put it back down and I see the next book. That may not be the best way to find books, but even still, there are a lot of books that I'll see in the bookstore that I've heard about until I see the cover. I'm like, oh, this is Song of Achilles. This is Little Life. By the way, I'm not reading Little Life because I like being happy. But even still, that's usually how I am with stories. And this is how it was with Severance. I just kept hearing about Severance. I never really went into what it was about. I just started watching it. And then I found out, okay, this is, you know what? I see what everybody is talking about. This, you know what? This makes a lot of sense. So if that's how you are with shows, then feel free to stick around. But if you're someone who just really, you want to know everything on your own, you don't like spoilers, that's perfectly fine too. This may not be the Tuesday hour for you. But if you also don't care, if you don't care about spoilers at all, then again, you can stay a while and then, come back and we can talk about other shows. But for now, I'm going to put you guys on break and we will be right back. Okay, I'm back. Okay, this is my first time doing this, so I'll get used to it. Yes, I hope you guys like the ads, everything like that. It's very cool. Really, what's the word that I'm looking for? Official. So, I told you guys about the effective communication. Again, this is actually, if you're tuning in, this is Laura Love Tales by Trin. Hi, we're here talking about the weird human resources behind Severance, and you came at a really good time. So, I told you guys earlier before the break that there was a little bit of history that goes way back into human resources. And I was like, this is pretty chill. Like, I have never thought of it this far. So with human resources, I'm not going to go into the entire history because one, again, I told you it goes like very far back, but on top of that, it's not really I'm only telling you about like a certain limitation of where we're stopping. I'm going to talk about this history and then we're going to stop here because this is what I need for Severance. So I'm going to give you the best way I can, like, I'm literally about to make up a word, trinitize it. Like, I'm going to make it Trin because I'm not going to sit here and be like, at this point of the time and then dust. Like, I want to try just making it a little palatable. If you know anything about like on Instagram and they have like hood history, can't do that. This is a Catholic university. So I'm going to sit and tell you a little bit about the history. From what I've learned with sneaky studying, from my classes, doing extra, I say sneaky studying, it's like extra research, looking at articles. It's kind of self-explanatory. So it's a conglomerate of all those things that I gathered. So we're going to begin. So to my professor, he explained that the human resources is actually one of the earliest evolved management functions. So it's like before marketing, before accounting, before financing. It's the first sign of it that we've seen. And way back to the hunter-gatherer society. So if you want to put like a specific species of human, like Neanderthalensis to be scientifically specific. But at this point, they understood the division of labor. They understood how passing down these traits and passing down this information not only was, I'd say, it's good for the rest of the generation, but these traits need to be inherited. You need to understand how to do these things because at the end of the day, these people, the only thing that they needed to do, their whole collective, was to survive. They didn't think that they didn't believe that everyone was a leader. One job was better than the other. Maybe they had some influence within their groups, yes, but they were just like, everybody's role is important and we need to survive. Because if you think about it, at this time, nobody had to worry about selling credit cards every week or like a specific credit card at the end of the day. We didn't need a company budget. They didn't have to save money and all this stuff. They was literally like, I need to wake up tomorrow. We need to make sure that those berries that we ate won't have us like frothing at the mouth in 30 minutes. We need to make sure that everything goes down and allows us to see the next day. So it's argued, like it's not fully documented, but if we're gonna, on a technicality, it makes sense because at that time, our currency system wasn't really in full effect yet. So there goes accounting and financing. And then marketing is like, what are you marketing? There's nothing really to market at the time. So that's why people say, human resources is one of the first signs of management functions. So if you want to look it up, just look up like hunter-gatherer human resources. So after that, though, I've got my notes here. So if you hear some rustling, I'm very detail oriented, so it's fun. This gives me excitement. So later on, when we hear that about hunter-gatherer societies, these people, again, were not only trying to survive with themselves, but they were surviving against other animals, but they're also surviving alongside the environment, right? At this time, if we fast forward a little bit, there were points in time when this, Europe was just under so many centuries of war. Like you had the war, you had all these plagues, everybody was dying and dropping like flies, and a little bit within the environment, the last part, a little bit of, the ice age or something like that, all of these crops were dying. So at that point, once the earth started to recover, all of the crops were just like all the crops that held nutrients, like, corn and potatoes. People were like, you know what? We have food now. We can eat. So at this point, not only were people surviving longer, but they were living longer, because those people at that time in the hunter-gatherer societies, they were dying at like 20, 30. It's pretty young. So once people started understanding how to survive a little more, they had more time to tinker. And at that time, around the people like pre-industrial revolution, everyone was like, we may not have technology. We may not go by a minute system, but we sure know how to know what the day is just by the solar positions. We know when it's gonna be. We know how close it is to winter just by like the chill of the air. And at that point, like I said, everybody had so much time to tinker. Everybody had an understanding of what they were doing. And I was just like, okay, this is pretty interesting when I'm learning about this stuff. And this is when we get the evolution of inventions, like the spinning jenny, the spinning machines or spinning water machines is where a lot of this stuff came into place, because at that time, the best thing about advancement is our own human collaboration. Like us collaborating with each other over centuries have been the best, the things that we figured out. So after that came the Industrial Revolution. Who would have thunk it? It brought this, mass urbanization of jobs, and this, I think, if I may be so bold, I think at this point was kind of the birth of the middle class, because there was a point where it was like a binary of either you were very poor or you were really rich. And at this point, once we're shifting from cottage farm industries to like industrial manufacture warehouse industries, it was kind of like pulling more out of the job. So it's not only one person working on a car, there's multiple people working on parts to build the car, like, the assembly line with Henry Ford and everything like that. So that came the Industrial Revolution, but the beginning of it wasn't so bright. There was a lot of people, this is where we saw the first signs of people unionizing, and, there were child labor laws and people dying left and right, and then it came an uproar and all these management disputes, and people were angry. People were upset that they were losing limbs, losing their family members over these big hunks of metal that no one really knew how to use. So when they were like, oh, let's unionize, because we shouldn't be treated like this. Because at the time, the managers usually just, their concept, their ideas, their thought processes were like, you need to work, but we're not going to pay you that much. We know you need a job, but we're not going to treat you nicely, and we're probably going to pay you next to nothing. So everybody was like, oh, okay, let's just unionize. How about that? And then the managers were like, let's not get too hasty. Let's relax. And that's when we came with like welfare secretaries that at that point were like hire, fire, reward, and discipline. And that evolved into an employment manager, and then that turned into a personnel manager, to which at that point I thought was the same as a human resources manager. And boy, was I wrong. So I will tell you the difference. So human resources managers, or HR, because I feel like I'm going to get tired of saying human resource. I'm just going to say HR. So HR managers, they specialize in development within the workplace. They understand that everyone's lives are different. Everyone comes from a different place. Everyone has a different walk of life. So in order to build the morale between employers and employees, we need to have a conversation. We need to build you up so that you can stay here, or even better, have people like love us so much, love this job so much that you talk about it with somebody else to intrigue somebody to also work here. That's more like a human resource manager's speed. But like a personnel manager, it's really just transactional. I'm just working on formalities. You got a great job. You're the highest employee. Like we see your progress. Great job. It's nothing too spectacular. Personnel managers saw their employees as tools, and then HR managers saw their employees as assets. And this is what I'm going to get into with Severance. See, I didn't want to get too much, and we're actually doing really great on time. So when we get into Severance, due to the podcast, now one thing that I love about people is that when it comes to maybe like a cinematic work, a TV show, anything, again, like I said, anything that comes to mind when it has to do with a narrative, they'll make something about it. They'll talk about it. And what makes it even better is the people who created the piece will come on and talk about it in interviews. So what I love about movies and TV shows is that people, they will make a watch party, like a watch podcast. Hey, we sat here and watched Severance, and here are our thoughts about it, which is really cool because you get to see other people's perspectives about it. Because again, everyone's lives are different, and depending on what scene we're watching, everybody is interpreting the scene very differently. And it's the same scene we're watching, but people will probably be like, wow, this makes me think of my friend that I used to know. And I wonder, like, it makes it everyone thinks about different things. And it's just like, it's interesting. But what makes it even better again is that a lot of times they'll have like it's like the official podcast with all of, maybe even a good chunk of the cast or the director. And they'll have guest shows from the cast that is still working on the show. And I love it. So the Severance podcast, which is literally what it's called, is the two hosts, Ben Stiller, who is the executive producer and director of Severance, and Adam Scott, who plays Mark Scout, the main protagonist in Severance. And it's really cool because I'm like, these are, you don't really see that too much. You don't see that too often. Sometimes when there's like an official podcast, maybe they'll have the main protagonist in for like a couple. But other than that, it's just, So I started listening to that. And for the first episode, they brought in Dan Erickson, who is the creator of the show. He's the reason why the show exists. And he talks about how Severance really came to be. And he graduated from NYU in 2012. And getting I think his degree was like, dramatic writing for television. Go figure. And he came back once he graduated. He came in like in serious debt. And at that point, he decided to go into work. And he started, from what they said in the episode, the first episode, he said it opened the door to the Door Factory. So if you've seen Severance, there's a little bit of a foreshadow there. But with the Door Factory, I'll say this. You are nothing but grateful for the job that just pays the bills. Like you're nothing but grateful for the placeholder job that puts money in your pocket, but in your heart of hearts, you would rather be somewhere else, but you show up anyway. And this is exactly how Dan Erickson was. He was like, I'm nothing but grateful for this job, but I'm pretty sure everybody at that job knew that I would rather be somewhere else. And then he later said, he started working because, it's after a while, working at any job that you're not really fond of is just like, I don't want to work here anymore. He goes, what if I could jump ahead and suddenly it would be 5 and I would have done the day's work, but I wouldn't have to experience it. And so that's the idea of where Severance really began. And if you need like a little synopsis via Google, I searched it up and I put it in my notes so that I can read it to you guys. So Severance is a psychological thriller series centered around Lumen Industries, a company where employees undergo a medical procedure that separates their work memories from their personal memories. This procedure, called severance, results in innies, work selves, having no recollection of their outie, home self, and vice versa. The show follows Mark Scout, played by Adam Scott, as he leads a team of severed employees in the company's enigmatic macrodata refinement department. while also navigating the personal and professional complexities of his own severed life. So when I started watching this show, I was like, when I watched the first episode, because I rewatched the first episode for the sake of this episode, or this Tuesday hour. When I watched it for the very first time, I remember Helly, which is one of the main protagonists as well. She was just on this table and just saying, "Who are you?" Like just hearing, "Who are you? Who are you?" And I was like, okay. But now that I watched it, when I rewatched it, I was like, you know what? This is actually kind of a foreshadow of what this show really is, because Helly, her Annie, she has no idea who she is. Absolutely no idea. But later on, when, we got through the little survey and stuff, we see Mark, our main character, in the car crying. And again, when I saw this for the first time, I was like, real. Because I was like, hey, nobody really likes going to a job that they're not really fond of. Like, of course, like, you might just have to, give yourself that motivation. Like, you have to go to work. You may have to shed a tear, and that's okay. But we got to do this. So this is where I thought it was going. I was like, oh, true. So when he went in and he signed up and he got, what's the metal detectors and stuff like that, he goes into the elevator and this weird distortion happening with the camera. And I was like, huh? Like, oh? And then there's like a small frying going on, like a distant fried sound effect going on. And Mark's face starts to like morph. And I'm like, oh, what's happening here? Like, what's going on? And that's really what hooked me. I was like, okay, yeah, again, because earlier when I mentioned, I had no idea what this show was about. I just wanted to be surprised and just understand why does everybody love Severance so much? And I was like, oh, you know what? I get it. Because when you're introduced to any work, especially in the first, hour or the first chapter of a book, there's a lot of info dumping. And it's like, you either lose me or you got me. And at that point, he did, because they started talking about Petey. And I was like, okay, well, who is this? I don't even know who this is. Why is there some random person outside of his house? All this stuff. But when it comes to the leadership that I was telling you about with Cobell and Milchick, I thought it was interesting because Cobell's leadership is more of like a personnel manager approach. She's doing transactions, because in the first episode, Mark gets promoted as a chief department, or like department chief. Well, I don't know what's been going on lately, but he has been promoted to the department chief. And Miss Cobell is like, a handshake is available upon request. And let me tell you, whoever the casting directors were in this show were spot on, because every person in this show has this sort of deadpan that they can just deliver automatically, like in the blink of an eye. And Miss Cobell, she's just like, yeah, again, a handshake is available upon request. And Mark is just like, oh, okay, I'd like the handshake. and when they pan back to Miss Cobell, she's looking as if like, okay, you really asked me for this handshake? I actually don't like you. I don't really care about what you do. As long as the numbers are good, I don't care what you do, as long as you don't embarrass me. That's it. She sees all of her people as tools. And with Milchick, he sees, because his shift in leadership, he sees it like, oh, I can give you some great perks. He sees his people as assets, because he's understanding that in order for these people to be content with where they work, so they don't get too curious, they don't try and rebel. Let's not try and have this go on. I'm gonna sign you up with some really good things, because you're doing really great at your job. I bet some finger traps would do really well for you. And the weird things, the weird incentives that they have in this show, I'd have to do more research about that, but like there's not many spoilers. It's just like soft stuff, like very supporting things. I'm not really trying to tell too much in the show, because if you want to watch it, then you'll realize what I'm talking about. But man, oh man, when they talked about the music dance experience, I was like, oh, it's a dance party. But it's like, you have a specific catalog that you have to look at. You can't request the song, and it's like 5 minutes. You can only choose one instrument. You can choose the maracas, or the tambourine, or I think there was another thing, but it's like, it's a very mandated thing. And I was like, okay, this is so, the human resource, it's just like all of these things are just a formality, because from what I've heard, a lot of people in human resources are either really, really good, or they just do this just like as a tax write-off. You know what I mean? Like, we're just gonna, oh, did they have a 5-minute break? Did they get recognized for the things that they did? Yeah, I give them a sticker. Like, it's interesting. It's so fun. Oh, sorry. I don't know if that hurted your ears or anything like that, but I hit my clipboard on the mic. But before I part with you here, I thought it was important to talk about why I thought the show was so interesting to talk about. And when my friend Demaya was like, yeah, let me know what you think, what Lumen is. And I was like, I'm not going to be honest with you. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I don't really know too much about what Lumen is. I'm sure it's going to get revealed. But the thing that I'm most interested about is the fact that this show has been able to capture what it really means and how it really feels, depending on your perspective, what being in a corporate workplace is. Like the American corporate or mandated workplace culture. Because you're finding yourself in this job. You're like, oh man, I really like this job. This job is really cool. It gives me the money. Everybody's motivation was either they needed to make money to feed their children, and which is a very, like a lot of people are like, I don't really like being away for 12 hours, but if this feeds my children, is what I got to do, what I need to do, what I need to do, or I got to do what I got to do, which is, very noble and honorable thing to do, an honorable way to think. And then there's other people who are just like, I need to get away from my sorrows. I just need to work and not feel anything. And after a while, once you get into that rhythm of getting into a new job, you're just like, okay, this is cool. I know where the bathroom is. I know the people who are on my shift. We're all good. And you got this rhythm. I'm like, oh, this job is sweet. Then after a few months, you're like, I'm doing the same thing every day. I'm getting up at the same hour. I'm getting in the shower, putting on my probably work appropriate clothes. I'm making probably the same breakfast that is very time efficient and still keeps me hungry, like keeps me full. I'm driving the same route, probably listening to the same music, probably parking around the same parking spot, if not the same parking spot. And I'm going in here to do filing? Like I'm on an Excel sheet right now. How did I get here? And you're either really hyper aware of where you are at a certain time, or there are some people, I'm not talking about at this point, there are some people who really just like the simplicity. They like that everything is scheduled, and they like that they have a set routine every single day. And those are the type of people who stay at companies for decades. And those aren't the people I'm talking about. But the people who are like, wait a minute, there's no way I'm just sitting here color coordinating files right now. There's no way. How did we get here? And that's a very fun thing that I thought about with Severance, because it's really just like the workplace experience. Especially, I say mandated because it's not even just corporate. It's people who just like, if you have to, it's mandated, like, warehouse jobs. Like, I have to be here at this certain day, after a certain hour, then we're paying overtime, stuff like that. What else? One more thing. Oh, the theme song. I was going to play the theme song, but my kiosk is down right now. Well, not down, but like I have to log in and then put it together. And I just wanted to make sure that I knew how to get back to you guys after this. So I was really focused on making sure that you guys could hear me and stuff like that. But it's fine. I'll figure it out next week, and I can probably play some for you. But in the show's theme song, there's like because again, I don't want to get too music theory, because then that will really reveal how much of a nerd I am. So anyway, I'd have to say, if you listen to the Severance theme song, there's like a consonance and a dissonance and a consonance and a dissonance. Like there's like, it's going back and forth. And all I will say, because if you don't know too much about music theory, you'll know that major keys, I'll let you know that major keys are usually very fun, very light, very hopeful, very joyous. And then minor chords are usually very sad and uncertain and not really sure what's going on. And once you listen to it, Theodore Shapiro, who was the composer of the theme song, explained that he did that on purpose because the 4 chords are very prominent throughout the entire show. So these are like, this is the common theme song that you hear is what I'm talking about. So when you hear it, you're starting off with a minor chord and then a major chord and then a major chord and then a minor chord. He did that on purpose to resemble the darkness on the outside, but like the goofiness, like there's goats going on and there's melons and there's all these things, these major fun things happening in the middle, but major to happy to your extent. So it's like consonance, dissonance, and it's fun, especially when it gets like analyzed and interpreted too. But you got this like cool little melody going on after like little piano, like, you know, it's like, what's going on here? Like, it's really fun. We'll definitely talk about music more, but I'll ease everybody into it if you're not too versed in music theory, and that's perfectly fine. This has been fun. I'm gonna leave every Tuesday hour with like a fun fact of what's going on. So with Severance was actually written 5 years ago. So when I was starting my podcast, that's when Ben Stiller and Dan Erickson, they were all coming together working on Severance. It's like, you know, really put stuff into play, and now it's here, and hopefully I think it's getting its 3rd season. So yeah, this has been me. I'm gonna plug my stuff in. So my YouTube is Tren. It's TREN Universe. It's all one word, and it helps to like search via channel instead of like, because, you know, I'm no Corey Kenshin out here. But if you just look up the channel, it'll be there. It's just Tren Universe. My Instagram is Tren_Monae. It's MONAE. That's my middle name. And yeah, that's been me. This has been the Lore Love Tales. If you love lore, I hope to see you again next week on Tuesday. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you guys. Bye.
Radio DePaul.
Well, as we say in the radio business,
is Chicago's college
that's right.
connection.